Today we're going to be talking about electrical safety. My name is Michael Terry, I'm from Momentum Safety and Ergonomics, and this is the 5-Minute Safety Series. Okay, so when we're talking about electrical safety, we obviously need to start off by talking about what are our electrical hazards in the workplace. We're always going to have a talk to our workers and make sure they can tell us what they consider to be the hazardous pieces of equipment or any situations that they're aware of where there's any electrical risks. But also we need to get out there and observe our workplace using our inspection checklists. Like so many other hazards, you will identify things like broken electrical outlets, damaged cords, those sorts of things in your inspections. Now specifically what we're really looking for also is having a good close look at any portable electrical equipment. So it's much more likely to be damaged and hazardous if people are picking it up, dropping it down, putting it in the back of utes, those sorts of things, compared to something fixed like a fridge, which is really never going to be moved around very much. We're looking for things that have long, flexible electrical cords. The more cord there is, the more risk there is that that thing has been run over, stepped on, moved, stretched, something like that along the way as well. Of course, any electrical work is going to be hazardous in itself. Now, we're not going to be focusing on electrical work in this particular video, but be aware that anyone who's doing electrical work, there's obviously some hazards there. So when it comes to doing our risk assessments, we don't tend to do specific electrical safety risk assessments, but we tend to incorporate it into our other risk assessments. So for example, if you're doing a risk assessment on an item of equipment, you should include electrical safety as one of the hazards for that particular equipment. If you're looking at particular tasks, for example in the construction work environment, you will include electrical safety in your safe work method statement, and your risk assessment is all part of that safe work method statement that you did. So it's just making sure that we include electrical safety in whatever other risk management process that we're doing. When it comes to risk control, we need to make sure that we use the hierarchy of control as best as possible. Elimination and substitution aren't really practical for electrical safety. We need to use our electrical equipment obviously, so we're going to try and use engineering controls where possible. One of the best engineering controls is a safety switch, which is also called a residual current device, or RCD. These are devices which, when they sense a leakage of electrical current, will cut the supply and potentially save someone's life. So they're always on. Anytime you have an electrical device that's plugged into a circuit that's covered by an RCD, so long as that RCD is working properly and tested, then you will be safe from electrocution. It is going to save lives, that's for sure. So we recommend those as our primary engineering control for electrical safety. Other things to consider are things like where you've got your power outlets. So oftentimes we tend to increase the risk because we've got these big long electrical cords running through the workplace. So we need to consider locations of power outlets and potentially having things like suspended power outlets coming down from the ceiling, so we're not running cords in areas where there's lots of foot traffic, or even worse, rolling equipment that can crush and damage cords. So consideration of power outlets is really important. Our administrative controls are going to include any procedures relevant to electrical safety, but also another thing that we're going to have in place is appropriate testing and tagging of our electrical devices. So there is a particular schedule as far as what type of frequency you need to have for your testing and tagging, but it is also important to realize that test and tag is only really 100% relevant at the time that it's tested. So if something has a 12-month frequency for its testing and tagging, there is no guarantees that after that thing is tested that it's not going to be damaged sometime in that next 12 months. So test and tag is an additional control, but we prefer to rely on safety switches, that's for sure. Personal protective equipment will be relevant for electrical workers, but not really relevant for other types of electrical hazards. Here we can see a picture of the frequency that is recommended for testing and tagging. This comes from Workplace Health and Safety Queensland, so it's relevant to Queensland legislation, but other Australian states will have very similar frequencies. And you can see it depends on where you work. If you work in a workplace that's low risk, such as an office environment, you only really have to test and tag your electrical items about every 5 years. And you don't even have to do it if they're plugged into a safety switch. Whereas if you work in a construction work environment, it is mandatory to test and tag your electrical devices, and they have to be done every 3 months. So there we have it, guys. That's a quick summary of electrical hazards and electrical safety in the workplace. The main takeaways from today's session are that we need to make sure that we control our electrical hazards as best using the hierarchy of control. So we're going to use safety switches or residual current devices on every circuit that our devices are plugged into. We're going to make sure we consider the location of our power outlets and reduce the risk of cord damage through that. Where this doesn't control the risk, we're going to use test and tag as an additional control and any safety procedures that are relevant for electrical safety. Thanks for watching the 5-Minute Safety Series. If you felt like you got some value out of these videos, please click on the screen to see some of the other videos in the 5-Minute Safety Series, or otherwise feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel.